All right, Nick, let's talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think the main question on everyone's mind nowadays is what is going on with the quarterback position? Who's ahead? What have we seen lately? And up to this point, all we've heard is spring practice. We've heard anecdotes from the locker room. We've heard what the coaches think. We haven't seen any meaningful football-esque snaps. But that all changed this past weekend when we got to see them hit the field in a spring game-esque kind of debut game, and I think it was just going to be really, really insightful. We've got some really good updates on who's leading for this quarterback position. But before we get into that, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, the Buckeyes, we finally saw some, however modified or whatever it was, actual football snaps, some meaningful data on who is leading in this quarterback battle for the Buckeyes. Let's get into the article and we can talk more about this on the other side. This is from over on Fox Sports. It says, based solely on last Saturday's showcase, the leader in Ohio State's clubhouse should be Julian Sayin. Sayin completed 17 of 24 passes for a 70.8 completion percentage for 175 yards, one touchdown, and no interceptions, while flashing the tight window accuracy and rapid decision making that have endeared him to Buckeyes coaches from the moment he arrived via the transfer portal last winter. Secondly, Kienholz, however, endured some early struggles before settling in as the afternoon progressed. A 3-and-out on his opening drive gave way to a beautiful completion to wideout Brandon Ennis against zone coverage later in the first half, and his second half read option touchdown to Graham was among the better throws of the day by any quarterback. He finished 12 of 18 for 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. But nonetheless, people are saying the media's a buzz. Julian Sayin is the leader. He looked really good. He looked sharp. And I think this is a really good sign for the Buckeyes going forward. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Buckeyes fans, in the comment section below, we're talking about the quarterbacks. We're talking about the debut, spring ball, spring game, what we saw there. Was there anyone else, though, that maybe stood out to you? Did you watch the game? Did you see anyone that jumped out to you? Did you hear anything about someone else who looked really, really good in that showcase? Let us know your answers in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this latest out of Ohio State?
Yeah, so I think it's one of those things where I'll admit when I was wrong because I thought going through spring at a certain point we just said, listen, we're going to see the veteran show up. We're going to see Lincoln really kind of show that. I'm not saying that Julian Sain would have lost the quarterback battle, but it would have looked a lot closer. I think people were maybe a little early, my opinion, and I turned out to be wrong about Sain being the front runner so early and the clear front runner. And I still thought he would have won the job in the long term. But I said, listen, he's a young guy, right? He doesn't have the experience with the program the way Lincoln does, who's gone through some ups and downs. He's played some real football. Obviously, you look at bad performances like the Missouri bowl game, but the reality is he's got that element. He's battle tested, and I thought we would have seen that when the rubber met the road in a real competitive, the closest thing you can get to live action football, the spring game, the modified format. And it turns out Julian Sayin had the maturity and more of the leadership in that football experience. At least that's the way it looked, right? If you looked at Lincoln's performances and compared it to Julian's, you would have said Julian is the guy that's more battle tested and Lincoln wasn't, right? Slow to get going, right? Some flashes, but a little inconsistent. That's normally what you would expect from a much younger guy. Julian, on the other part, looked much more the veteran, much more composed, far from perfect, still some things to work on, of course. But I think the fact that he looked that level, that had that much composure, I think really impressed a lot of people. And if you listen to Ryan Day's comments, I think he's kind of like sneakily alluding to that. So this is what Ryan Day said. Again, same article, Fox Sports. He said, you can see there was this fairly significant emphasis on throwing the ball to see how the quarterbacks were going to respond. We'll use this as another evaluation tool because right from the jump, from when we got off the bus to when we just finished there, I'm glad we did this. I'm glad we did the spring game. It was definitely the right thing to do. I wish we could have stayed out there for another 4 hours and gotten these guys reps and gotten these guys work. All right, so what is he saying there? He's saying, listen, I'm glad we got the live fire reps because we were able to see which of these quarterbacks between Julian and Lincoln has the ability to step in week one. Let's get this ball rolling. Let's start fast. And it wasn't the veteran, it was the young guy. And I guarantee you, this is what Ryan Day has been waiting to see. He's like, okay, can Lincoln be the guy to lead us out the gate? Can Julian be the guy to lead us out the gate? And guess what? I know it's one game. I know it's one day. You hate to evaluate it, but this is an important measuring stick here. Lincoln wasn't the guy. It was Sayin. And I think that's where I was wrong. I thought with Sayin there'd be more inconsistencies. There'd be more starting slow. Turns out he's got the composure needed. He's got the mentality needed to go out there, snap one, week one, and lead this Ohio State offense to success. Now, will it be perfect? Absolutely not. No one's expecting that. But I think where Sayin proved me wrong, and I think he has asserted himself as a clear front runner, is that he has separated from Lincoln and everyone else as the guy to lead this team, the guy that's not going to have slow starts, the guy that's not going to struggle and hamper this offense the early part of the season. To me, I think what we saw in the spring showcase, spring game, whatever the heck you want to call it, Julian Sayin, in my mind, has already won the starting job. Now, listen, he's still got to earn it with leadership stuff over the summer, and he's going to have a good fall camp. We all understand that. Ohio State, Ryan Day, they're going to keep it close to the vest to protect for transfer portal and things like that. Smart move to make, of course. We talked about it at the time. But I think what we've seen over the course of spring ball, and especially Ryan Day's comments, leads me to believe that Julian Sayin has, for all intents and purposes, won the quarterback battle for Ohio State.
Yeah, Nick, and I think there's some other things that Ryan Day said in this, press conference talking about everything that really kind of makes me think the same way you do, as far as this really kind of, reset everything. And it's how he talks about Sayin versus how he kind of groups everyone else together in the rest of his comments. He talks about Sayin, Keinholz, and St. Clair all in the second part, but he really singles out Sayin by saying, I think the thing is for Julian that he has good days and then he has days that he's learning from. And Day said that a big trait for a great quarterback is resiliency. They keep coming back and keep learning. And he says if they keep making the same mistake over and over, that's not good. But he says he thinks that Julian has been resilient. He's glad that he's responded from the days that he's learned from, and he's really bounced back from some earlier rougher practices that we had heard about, and he's not making the same mistakes. I think that's a key here. Is Julian Sayin came out, he's not a freshman. He's not, this is a guy who's been around a little bit, teensy bit, hasn't played any really meaningful football, so to speak, but this is a guy that is, he has been around the block a little bit, but now he's starting to get more meaningful snaps. Now he's in this Ohio State program. We're seeing what he's able to do. We're seeing, how he's able to do things, and the fact that, he has great days, but then he has days that he maybe messes up, has a couple flubs. He learns from them and he bounces back and he doesn't repeat the same mistakes. I think that's Ryan Day saying, hey, I like the direction as this kid's going. I like what he's doing. I like the cut of his jib. This seems like a guy that, is going in the right direction for me. Then we see, the strong performance in this spring game. We've seen the strong performances through practice and stuff. I think, like you said, this is Ryan Day keeping things close to the vest, not really coming outright and saying anything, so to speak, because the spring transfer portal is open. People can leave the team at any point, and you want Keinholz to feel like there's still a battle going on down the stretch. But it seems like Day is leaning more and more and more in the way of Julian Sayin being the quarterback of this team, probably starting week one of this season. It seems like Julian Sayin is locked in to be the guy. And I love the progression that we're seeing, because early on we heard about Julian Sayin, bad practice here, good throw here, bad practice here, good practice here. And it seems like as this spring off season has gone on, we just keep hearing more better and better and better things about Julian Sayin, and less of, oh, he had bad something here, bad something here. So it seems like truly what Day is saying, if you follow the progression of the storyline of this whole offseason, that Julian Sayin is learning, is not repeating the mistakes, and is constantly getting better. That's what you want to hear. That's what we've been hearing. And that's why I think this is definitely a thing where Julian Sayin worked his way into the starting job. And I love that he started out, maybe had a couple of lumps trying to get used to playing big time football at Ohio State. Obviously, defending national champions, it's going to be a tough team to play for. I know he's coming from Alabama, but still, Alabama didn't win a national championship last year. Ohio State did. So Ohio State looking really good so far, and I really love the progression that we've seen from Julian Sayin early on.
Yeah, you hit on that point there a couple of times. It's the progression. It's one of those things I always look for in a quarterback, especially a young quarterback, and especially if there's a quarterback battle. who is getting better, right? Who's not repeating the mistakes? Who's improving? Who's becoming more consistent, more efficient? And it's very clear that Kienholz, at least compared to Sayin, hasn't been, right? And I've been a big Lincoln Kienholz guy, right? I thought he got a bad deal with that Missouri performance. I said, listen, he's an opportunity to learn from that. And I think he has, and I think he has improved, but he hasn't improved at the rate that I would expect or that I would like to see based on the data we've seen. Julian Sayin has taken massive leaps since the beginning of spring. I love guys that are getting better. I love guys that are improving, whether it's technique, efficiency, right? Especially at the quarterback position, taking on leadership roles, not repeating the same mistakes, being coachable, right? Again, not saying that Lincoln Kienholz isn't that, but Julian Sayin has shown himself to be, he's proven it now at this point that he's better at those factors. And if you can get better, if you're coachable, if you can become more efficient in the offense, stay ahead of the chains, avoid the disasters, with how stacked Ohio State is talent-wise, you can go a long way. And you factor in those flashes of raw talent that a guy like Julian Sayin has. There's a really high ceiling on this team. And it's really hard to say because they just won a national championship. But Will Howard was a phenomenal kind of leader guy, locker room guy, game manager with some flashes of talent. I actually like him as an NFL prospect, believe it or not. I think he's got a lot of great tools to eventually become a good NFL starter. But I think Julian Sayin showing that he has that same ability to be coachable, now to maybe take over some leadership roles and with more talent. Folks, this Ohio State team, I know people kind of looked at how they won the playoff last year as sort of not a lucky thing or a Cinderella story, but kind of just, hey, they got it done. They found a way to get it done. People are not counting them in as a favorite to win the national title this season. People are focusing on other programs. Folks, if Julian Sayin continues this rate of improvement, there's no reason to think Ohio State won't repeat. In fact, what I'm seeing from the quarterback at this point, they should be, my opinion here, clearly the heavy favorite to win the title in 25.